It's the last 2 weeks of the fantasy baseball season. Time to take down the hardware. We'll discuss lineup, pickup, bidding strategies, and more for the final 2 weeks of the season. Plus, we'll talk about the head-to-head points format with this year's Tout Wars regular season champion, Lauren Auerbach. The regular season finale of Beat the Shift is next. And welcome to another episode of the Beat the Shift podcast. I am your host, Ariel Cohen, and with me as always is Ruvain Guy. What's going on, Ruvain?
I'm doing well. How are you doing today?
Pretty good. We are back from vacation. So are you. School has started for our kids. How was your vacation, Ruvain?
Vacation went quite well. We actually drove from New York down to Atlanta to watch the Mets lose to the Braves, as they always do in Atlanta. But that was fun. And I actually met someone who was friends with a former Met, Edgardo Alfonso, and he had Edgardo Alfonso send me a personal message. The reason why he knew I liked Edgardo Alfonso is because I have an Edgardo Alfonso jersey that I wore to the Braves game. So it was kind of interesting. I know even though they lost, I still got to watch the game there. I'm trying to get to all the stadiums where the Mets play against another team. So, that's one more stadium off my bucket list. How's your trip?
My trip was fantastic. I ended up going to 4 stadiums in 5 days. We didn't end up going to the Met game on the Sunday we came back, did something else. I'm going to go to the Met game next week. But we went to Rochester to see the Rochester Red Wings. The next day we went all the way up to Toronto to see the Blue Jays. We then saw Niagara Falls the next day, and then we went to Binghamton to see the Rummel Ponies, which is the Mets. Then we went to Scranton to see the Yankees AAA team play the Mets, the Syracuse Mets. It was a great fun. I had my son with me the whole time. My wife and other son came just for the final day for the Scranton game. But we had a great time. It was great hanging out with him, great seeing ballparks. My favorite stadium, other than, I mean, the Major League Stadium you can't really count. It's a different thing. But my favorite minor league ballpark of that was Scranton. It was like sunken in the forest. It was beautiful. We could walk all the way around. I thought that was my favorite stadium of all.
Well, I've been to Syracuse and I've been to Rochester and I've been to Binghamton. The great part about it is minor league baseball is so much fun. It's so much more entertainment in between innings. It's just so much. There's so much going on. It's a really great experience if you've never had it before.
Absolutely. All right, well, we've got a great show for today, our last regular season episode. It's our last 2 weeks episode with 2 weeks left to go. And to join us from Fantrax, Lauren Auerbach. What's going on, Lauren?
Hey guys, not much. Thank you for having me on. I'm excited to be here. I have to tell you guys that I am a long-time kind of fan and listener of this show. So to be sitting here as kind of a first-time guest, I'm just like over the moon, and I'm so happy to be talking end of season baseball. I cannot believe it's almost over.
We're so glad to have you. And I remember when we were doing the show live in Arizona. You come into the room singing the theme music.
I love it. I love it. Yeah.
Yeah. So great stuff. We're glad to have you. And one of the reasons we're having you also is that you have had a fantastic run in Tout Wars, actually for the second straight year. Did you finish the regular season first, both this year and last year?
No, I finished the regular season this year first, and last year it was second. I was behind
okay.
Sky. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I know you. Sky won last year. Right now, you're in the semifinals, trying to hit it out. You're a couple points right now. Actually, 30 points actually behind Clay Link, who's having a good week.
Yep.
I'm currently beating Chris Torres in the other bracket by 13 points. It's gonna be tough. I came back in the quarterfinals against Ryan Hallam. I was down 80 points before Friday's game, and somehow I made it. Yusei Kikuchi stunk for him, and Framber Valdez had an extra start. Thank you very much, Framber. And I played Cade Smith. I picked him up and played him, and that worked. And I'm just crossing my fingers. And you never know in this kind of format,
I mean, that's the thing. And I think that's why I think people sometimes love this format, and sometimes people aren't really crazy about it, because I think that argument is, the best team doesn't always win. And I understand kind of the criticism of it. I think Ruvain, you're kind of one of these guys. You're
Yeah,
not a fan of this format, right?
I am not a big fan, and we'll discuss this a little bit later. But I'm in a league that's a head-to-head league, and I didn't deserve to win the first league, and I didn't deserve to lose the second week. So in the playoffs, I'm talking about. So I just don't I don't love it because it's you get ready for a whole fantasy season, and you do well, you pick the players you want, and you're doing great. You make the playoffs, and one bad week or one injury, and your whole team and your whole season's down the tubes. I don't love that.
Yep, you're out.
Do you like this format, Laura?
I do. I mean, I will say that I had never played, head-to-head points leagues prior to my time in town. And so this is my third year, and I have to say that I was really kind of thrown the first year. I didn't do well that first year. I finished like 9th or 10th out of 12. And I had kind of always been a kind of a roto gal, in my kind of for fantasy baseball. And I naively thought that I could kind of take my kind of balanced rosters and spread the wealth kind of strategy and just kind of insert it into head-to-head formats, and it doesn't like really work that way. So I would say if you are kind of a new time follower, for this format, like, do not underestimate kind of the differences between this and other formats that you may have played.
Well, I'll tell you, the last couple of years, I always have a list of people that I got to be careful at the auction because they always go for either similar players or similar value spots, actually, more like it. And you're on that list. I got to worry what you're going to do because you have. Yeah.
Well, I take that, as a compliment. I think, like what I said, I really struggled that first season, and I went in that off season, kind of was like, okay, I've got to figure out, kind of recalculate how I am going to kind of attack this league. And I made some tweaks, and I've stuck with it for the past couple of years, and I've had 2 strong seasons, and I'll probably continue sticking with it, until it doesn't work.
Well, I've definitely noticed it. I mean, I go in and then, there's a couple players. I'm like, yeah, I'll get them. And I got to worry that you're going to grab one of them. The league has gotten better over the years. I have to say that. It's definitely harder for me to get who I want. And it's I'm not going to say a struggle, but it was much easier free range a couple of years ago before you and some of the other current guys got into the league. I used to wait players went ridiculously overvalued, and I used to wait like 30 picks before I made my first selection. Everybody's like, "Hey, Ariel, are you gonna play today?" and then I would get like $20 guys for $10, and I got like 8 of them. I think I one year, the one year that I won it, I think I had every player I bought was like between $10 and $20.
Oh, nice.
And my whole team was that, and it was stacked.
Yeah,
because I just got value.
Is it now? Have you kind of always finished strong? Like, how many years have you been in this league?
I've been in this league since right before COVID. I think 2019 or 2020. I've never missed the playoffs. Never.
Okay, yeah.
I've finished first in the regular season a bunch of times, second a bunch of times. I finished third this year. Maybe in a bad year I finished in 5th or so. Mm-hmm. But I've always made the playoffs, and I've never worried. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about some of the strategy in-season draft auction. So I'll tell you my strategy this year, the thing that I tweaked, because I always got locked out of the playoffs. I come to playoffs, and I got no pitchers, and I'm like, oh, great. It's all about pitchers, and I got to pick garbage pitchers off the waiver wire, and what am I going to do? So I said, you know what? Screw it. I'm just going to go pitching heavy. And I felt like I could do that a little bit more because I felt the room would be hitter heavy. And so I just went with a bunch of $20 plus starters. And I had, Wheeler, Framber Valdez, Logan Gilbert, and you name it. And I think that strategy has worked because I come down to playoffs and we've got injuries. I mean, Wheeler's not there, right? So even with buying all those guys, my pitching is not super strong going into the playoffs because of injuries, but at least I got something. Last year I was decimated, and that's why I lost, so I figured let's tilt it, and I think that worked, and I got plenty of strategy plenty of value in the hitting that I knew I would make the playoffs. I knew I would get enough value to get in, and I just wanted to have the biggest chance with the most pitchers. What about you?
Yeah, I tend to be a little bit more focus on the hitting on kind of come draft day. I mean, always go into, because we're playing an auction, I kind of have a narrowed down kind of player pool, and I'm only interested in X amount of guys. And but it always tend to be, I kind of put the hitters first for some reason. I think that, like, and I don't know if this is really true, but I've found that I've have a easier time kind of streaming pitchers throughout the season as opposed to hitters. And I'm more willing in kind of head-to-head leagues to take stabs and shots at on pitchers in this format than I am kind of in my all of my roto leagues. Part of it is, I think, you don't have kind of ratios. The other part is, this is my only 12-team league as opposed to 15-teamers, so the pool is deeper. But I don't mind. I feel somewhat comfortable streaming pitchers in this format, and so I kind of focus more on draft day, on the hitters, and play a little bit more kind of by ear as the season moves on with the pitchers. I will say this year, though, my pitchers have been like trending on the wrong side. They've kind of cratered over the past month or so, and excuse me, sorry, and so I found myself kind of on kind of on my heels to a certain extent, trying to find enough pitchers, because I think that this season I feel it was a little kind of dried up recently. So I'm really kind of crossing my fingers right now on my pitching side, but there's nothing that I can do about it at this point.
And I'm in a head-to-head league for the first time. I've been doing a 6x6 league, so there's quality starts, and I went pitcher heavy, just like that's what I'm used to doing pitcher heavy. The problem is that I also got a lot of relievers, and I didn't know that this league that I'm in, I'm just joining the league for the first time. They don't always go by the relievers. They go like to get the reliever slash like starting pitcher slash relief pitcher, and I lost a lot of weeks because I didn't realize that until like a little bit later, because it wasn't one of the top leagues I'm like paying attention to. And I mean, pitching, I think it's easier to stream in head to head because it's much easier for you to just drop in a pitcher because you can get another two-star pitcher on the waiver wire or get a good start. I think next year going to another head to head league, I think I'm going to go more hitter heavy because I think you need that one stud, just like we have in the regular roto leagues. Get that one stud starting pitcher, but the other guys you can just fill in with them, and I think going hitter heavy and going power heavy may be the way to go next year.
I was gonna say, I have a question, because I know that in our league for our pitchers, we have seven starters, and then you have kind of two reliever spots. And I know that I always just dedicate one spot for one closer. I'm not really punting on the category, but I like to kind of use this hybrid mix of going with kind of one closer, and then I use kind of a spark, to kind of fill in that reliever position. It's worked out fine for me so far, but I'm always, when I look back, I'm always, kind of last in that category. And for some reason, I just don't, I don't go with two closers in this league.
I had four closers on my team, and I ended up only playing like one or two, maybe a week, and so I ended up dropping a couple of my closers, and those are waste of picks in my draft.
I drafted Ryan Helsley, and he's adios already, and I still have 4 closers left. But, listen, I mean, my strategy is a little bit different, but you got to know what the point values are for your league. So, for example, for our league, I've noticed that innings pitched is very heavy. So when you're picking starters, you want guys who are giving length. High strikeout guys who only last 4 innings, maybe 5 innings, not worth as much as guys who last 6, 7 innings. They don't got to pitch a lot of strikeouts, but they got to have a lot of innings. And, of course, innings give you more chance for a win. My son played in a league last year where it wasn't that much on the pitching. It was more on run prevention, and saves were worth a lot. So the strategy that I gave him that he won with was pick Terry Skubal and just pick like the 4 best closers, and that's it. And that worked. So with points leagues, you got to know what plays. That's a big thing. Is there anything that you found, Lauren, that was overvalued or undervalued in our particular format in Tout Wars?
The big change for me from kind of that going from that year one, at least on the hitting side, was, and it goes to kind of knowing your kind of scoring settings. I think that something that's really undervalued is plate discipline metrics. And sure, you want guys that hit home runs. Sure, you want guys that can provide stolen bases. But I think that plate discipline is easy to gloss over. But you have to remember that, at least we've been playing by the CBS kind of rules for the past 3 years since I've been in there. And You get points for guys, batters that walk. You get points taken away, if they strike out. And to me, that's something it's an underrated aspect. And so when I went back to the drawing board, kind of after in that first kind of off season, I really kind of narrowed down the player pool to guys who have, strong plate skills, who are, making those extra base hits. And to me, I figured that because I always end up light in power in a lot of my leagues. It's just like a thing that I have a problem with. I'm always light in power. So I thought at least in this league, I can make up for that with guys that are getting that, maybe 1 or 2 points for walking. And so for me, that's the core of a lot of the players that I'm interested in. And it's, I think, something that people may think is not a big deal, but I do think it's a big deal, at least in the format that we play in.
Yeah, and steals are not as worth as much as in Roto, because steals it's your own category. So for anybody
Right.
who's used to Roto pricing, it's not as much. I remember a couple of years ago. I don't know if you were in the league at that time, but I don't know. I wanted to see who the guys who don't know what the rules, and I threw out at Alberto Mondesi with like my first or second pick, and my value sheet had him at worth $3. And he's going 5, 8, 12, 15, 16, 17. I'm like, oh my God, these guys don't know what in the world. So of course the next one after, I threw up another high value, another high stolen base guy who doesn't really do much else, just to get so much value off the board. Because if you don't know the rules, again, if you're playing in a points league, you got to know your rules. One last question about head to head, especially Tout Wars, when. Since you were riding first place, I think I was in first place for a while, but then you just jumped ahead and never looked back. How close to the playoffs do you actually gear your team for the playoffs? I mean, you knew you were going to make it a while. You probably knew that you had to buy a couple weeks earlier. Do you ever just say, okay, the heck with my week to week. I got to line my rotation up. I got to get guys. I got to get injured guys who are coming back. I don't have to worry about the week to week. Do you, at a certain point, gear your team for the playoffs?
I do, but really in a cursory sense. Like, with week to week, obviously you're very hyper aware of kind of upcoming schedules, right? But I think that maybe 3 or 4 weeks out, I will just kind of look at kind of the rest of season, kind of an outlook. If there are things that kind of pop out to me, whether, there's a team that is playing maybe way less games or more games than usual. I'm always kind of checking kind of matchup statuses, like where are the Rockies playing at the end of the season, kind of stuff like that. And I'll just make notes. And but it's, like I said, it's very cursory, but I will take kind of those notes and then kind of apply it to my team and be like, okay, well, am I going to have some trouble matchups, in those final kind of, 2 weeks? Do I need to find other pitching solutions, or platoon players? I've got a couple platoon players on my team. It's like, okay, well, look ahead. Are they facing a bunch of lefties? And if so, okay, what do I want to do with them? Do I want to drop them? What do I want to do? And so just kind of little things like that, because I still think that when you're talking kind of 3-4 weeks out, a lot changes in baseball, and it's a time of year where there's a lot going on. You're getting players are getting called up. There's roster expansion. There's just regular injuries that occur, and so just kind of on that kind of very surface level, that's what I do kind of 3 or 4 weeks out.
When what I did for my league is I actually looked at the 2-star pitchers like in advance, the expected 2-star pitchers in like 2 weeks ahead, so 2 weeks ahead, and I just try to gather and pick up as many as possible and see how they do the next week. If I don't like them, I can always throw them away. No one's going to get them anyway. But this way, I have a monopoly on the 2-star pitchers for that week.
Nice.
Yeah, I'd say that lining up rotations is hard, but I mean, if you have some injured pitchers that are coming back at some point, then you can pick them up off the waiver wire if the next couple of weeks don't matter for you, right? I mean, certainly I would say that, even in the draft season, even at the very beginning, for if I see a $1-2 player or a guy in reserve round on a pitcher that I know is injured now but might come back, since Tout Wars has unlimited IL, you can take a chance a little bit more on the injured players. Now, usually in an NFBC league, I'm not taking any injured player at all because that clogs a spot. But if you have if you have IL and unlimited IL, then your $1 is probably better spent on the guy who's coming back later. Because remember, you can pick up somebody else for the first week, right? So there's a lot of different things you can do in preparation for playoffs. Always know your league strategy. Let's talk last 2 weeks of the season, and had a manager lineup, had to decide what to do. I think the first question I have for you, Lauren, is how do you know if you can and should drop a player? We're talking either an injured player or maybe an underperforming player.
I think on just a very kind of simple level, if they're not kind of bringing anything to your lineup, you don't have any more time. If you're 2 weeks out, there's no more time to wait for kind of results to catch up with underlying metrics, and in these final weeks, what matters most is that you are filling your roster with guys who are producing, and especially who are producing in the categories that you can make gains in, as the season winds down. So just kind of on a simple level there, it's just like if they're not bringing much to your lineup, and also it's like if you are, this is a time of year where we're attacking categories, and you may be, say, set in speed, and you may be looking then like at your roster, maybe you've got a speedster on your bench. That is probably not like a productive use of a bench spot. And so that's always a drop candidate, but you have to be careful when you do that, because just because you don't need speed doesn't mean that someone else in your league, doesn't either. And so I think that in the case of kind of that situation like that, where you have you're set in a category, you always kind of want to be careful, because you don't want to drop a player even though you're set. If you look at some of these speed needy teams, and if you've got guys kind of right behind you in the standings who need speed and can benefit from the player that you're considering dropping, you may kind of think twice about that. So I think that's an instance where you have a candidate, a drop candidate, but you don't want to do it. It may not be the best move to make for your club overall.
Yeah, I mean, you do also have to be careful, because you might want somebody to pick up that player. Maybe the person
That's
has
true.
a lot of fab and can chase a guy who you want to be chased and caught, and that can net you a point that way, right? So you're playing a little bit of a game and taking a look. The only thing I'd add to that also, though, is that you want to play players in categories that you can gain, but also where categories where you can very quickly lose.
Yes.
It's about the marginal ones. It's where categories are tight.
Yeah.
Is more important. Ruvain, what about
But
you?
also this type of year, I'm a little bit more. I have less of a leash for these injured players. If I know they're not going to play in the next week or two, and they're not going to really give me much benefit, or you're only going to get maybe a week and a half out of them, if anything at all, it's very easy for me to say goodbye, cut them, because let someone else have to deal with that headache. Because if I need active players, I need players with playing time. I need players who are not necessarily in a playoff race, but playing time, because you can be in the Nationals and get as much playing time as or more playing time if you're slumping on a team that's going for the pennant race. So you have to look at the playing time, number one. But when it comes to the injuries, if you think you're not going to get that much value out of them and you cut them this week, or last week or even next week, how much value is someone going to get from that injured player when they pick them up? Half a week, maybe, or something like that. So at this point, I think you can say, you know what, this guy is not cutting it. I don't know if he's coming back, and I'm going to give you some examples when I do my injury report, like a Dean Kramer. You don't know when he's coming back. Maybe he's coming back. Are you going to keep him? He's a borderline player anyway. You don't love the waiver wire, but there's this guy that, you know what, maybe he can still give you a quality start. He can give you a couple more strikes, get you another win. But there's so many maybes. It doesn't get you the stats. Maybes are not stats.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think kind of similarly, I really don't really have an interest in, injured pitchers who are coming back, because right now we're at the point where they're only like max 3 starts, and you're not going to throw them out there for that first start, and it's just a risky proposal altogether. But kind of in that kind of same area, I think when talking about pitchers, I think outside of kind of your studs, I think if you're looking kind of at like mid-level or mid-range pitchers, and if you're looking ahead in the schedule and that pitcher may have 2 really challenging matchups, I think that's also a time where you can be a little bit more loose in terms of cutting someone, because if you look at those matchups and you're not crazy about necessarily putting them in, I think you can consider dropping that player.
let's talk about the other side. What are you looking for to pick up on the wire? I'll just give my quick things. You're obviously looking at recent performance. If you see guys who are hot, you're going to be interested in that. But to me, above all, it's somebody who's getting an increased playing time, either because team are out of it or there's an injury. I mean, take a guy like Harrison Bader. He's now batting leadoff because he's A, hot, B, he's batting first. Trey Turner is out. I mean, to me, that's like a no-brainer. What else are you looking for, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think that that's good. It's like you want these guys that kind of are really going to fit kind of your needs for your team and those like I said, kind of those categories that you're going after. I also think, I always keep an eye on guys who you can kind of stash, hitters who are coming off of the IL. I do take an interest in that versus pitchers that are coming off of the IL. I think you see something like Jake Berger, for instance. If you're desperate for power in one league, I picked him up just because it's like, okay, he's had this disappointing season, but he's someone who you just need him to produce for 2 weeks, and right now it's paid off. That my move is paid off, but it's guys that like that's something that I'm looking to kind of maybe stash on the player. And this is kind of the time of the year, for call-ups. I'm a little bit more interested in pitcher call-ups at this point and pitcher prospects than hitter, but those are guys that are gonna start seeing some more playing time too. And so it's also about kind of maximizing your roster, but also making sure that your bench makes sense too. So kind of keeping this notion of like I guess bench depth pieces, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Reuven, you've done this strategy before about picking up future two-start pitchers. What can you say about that?
Yeah, the future two-star pitchers, what I usually do is I'm looking on Wednesday, and Stu's pitching on Wednesday, Stu's pitching on Thursday, and see how they line up for the following week. So you can, get a decent start for the pitcher on Wednesday, and you can definitely see whether or not they'll have a two-start the next week. But just like Lauren said, you can't necessarily get any two-star pitcher you want, because if it's a middling pitcher, let's say it's a middle rotation pitcher, and they have a tough two-start turn coming up, you may still not want them, but you may want them for the one. If you want to do it, that's not a bad idea either, because if you pick up the pitcher who has two start the following week, but has a decent start that week, you can use them that week and then still drop them, and no one will get those other two starts. So it's like going to the abyss. So you don't have to worry about that. But the two-star pitchers can help you, but you have to be very careful with them. You don't want to blow your ERA. You don't want to blow your WHIP. You do want the strikeouts. You do want the wins, but you have to also see these two-star pitchers you're going to pick up. How many innings have they been going the last couple of times? Are they going 4 2/3? Are they going 5 1/3? How quick of a hook are they in a pennant race? There's a lot of different things that play into it, and you have to really concentrate and look up. And Lauren, you mentioned about the minor league pitchers. How many innings did they throw in the minor leagues? Look that up, because even though they may get 1 or 2 starts, you may not get that last start you need the last week, because they may hit an innings limit. So a lot of the guys that got called up, actually their innings are kind of low, so you're not going to have that issue. But for the most part, you have to watch the innings limit. A lot of them are going to hit. A lot of young pitchers are going to hit their innings limit soon.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Now, these are all great points, and hopefully everybody is listening to all this advice as you're picking who you're going to play, who you're going to pick up, who you're going to drop. Lauren, have you ever tried to pick up a player the last week in order to block somebody else from getting them? Like somebody really could use speed. You don't, but let's pick them up so they can't get them.
I really haven't. I feel like this is something maybe you guys have done, and you can probably maybe speak to it a little bit more than I can, because honestly, guy, I know, like, I just get, you guys give off that vibe. I'm so busy. I feel like trying to get my team in order and, set my lineup, and I'm like, I've got to maximize my players for my bench. And so I'm like, so like focused on that I really have yet to kind of step up to that next level of fantasy play and start messing with my league mates.
Let me just preface it. Yeah, first of all, you've got to be in a position that you don't have to pick up players to gain. You got to be in a winning position. Number 2, you have to have enough fab dollars to do it that you can waste some money, right? If you only have a couple of dollars left and you got to make picks or whatever, you're not going to spend money to block somebody, right? You have to be in that position. But if you are in those positions, that's a great move, right? This guy can only gain by getting steals. Just take a steals guy off the waiver wire. Definitely. Closers. This guy needs saves. Well, who's on the waiver wire? do that. I think we did that in one league, Ruvain, this year in NFBC league. We're in first place, and we're like, I know we've got saves, but I mean, guys are on our heels. We've got 3 closers, but let's just get a fourth. What the hell? So they can't get,
Yeah, but the thing is, you may have to have that roster room, number one. And number two, even if you're not doing that per se, let's say you have other guys higher on your fab list, you can still put those guys in that you want to block someone else from getting. It's not you don't not necessarily have to go after them, but just have them in mind and put them on the list, put them in the queue. You never know. The player may end up falling to you, and you may end up blocking someone without even knowing it.
Lauren, do you have a plan on how you use your fab in the last 2 weeks? Because I'll just tell you my general plans in leagues, and of course, it's always context dependent, but all things equal, I want to spend like 2/3 of my remaining fab, in the second to last week, and 1/3 in the last week. Obviously, you're getting double the use for the last 2 weeks, and one there. And of course, you deplete your fab entirely the last week. That's without saying. If I'm in a $1 minimum fab league, like some leagues you can make 0 bids. If you're only in a $1 league, you might want to make it half and half, because then you really do have to make picks, and if you have to make 4 picks, you need the dollar for each of them. That's something else. But fab is important. I know I lost labor one year. I lost to Ron Chandler in the last week because I only had $1 left to fab. He had 2 for the very last week. He needed a stolen base guy, and so did I, and he got the guy, and that guy had 3 steals that week, and he jumped ahead of me and won by a point. So, and I think, believe it or not, that player was Harrison Bader that he took. Now, everything comes back to Bader.
But by the way,
he's the player that keeps giving.
A caveat on Harrison Bader. You see what he's doing this week against the Mets? This year against the Mets, he's batting over 600. Every other team, he's batting in the low 200. So just because he's doing really well this week doesn't mean he's going to do really well next week.
Was he playing the Mets next week?
No, he's not. They're done with the Mets. They're done with the Mets.
Mets are they were doing well at home. I guess it's whoever has the home field advantage is doing well. They can't beat the Phillies away. So disappointing. I hope our Mets make the playoffs, Ruvain. Cross your fingers.
Yeah, whatever.
But anyways, back to you, Lauren. What do you have a general last 2-week strategy?
I don't have like a kind of a hard and fast last 2-week strategy. I typically kind of operate like I want about like $100 left in the last month of the season, and then just whatever's going on in my leagues just kind of depends how I'm gonna unload that money. It's like if I am kind of sitting pretty in certain leagues, maybe I'm less willing to, I don't need to make a lot of moves, or I'll throw out kind of larger dollars than what I really need to, just to kind of winnow that number down. Or if I'm like, in a league where I'm really clawing and I'm kind of struggling a little bit, I have no problem kind of opening the wallet up. But always kind of just being mindful that, with me, those $100, you've got that 4 weeks. But it just kind of goes from there. That's really the only kind of thing that I work with, is kind of that 4 weeks out versus 2.
All right, question for you, Lauren. How do you manage ERA and WHIP down the stretch in roto leagues? How conscious are you of not putting in crappy players that could blow it? Sometimes you need to make gains in strikeouts and wins, so are you just all in on just pitching guys even if they're bad, and ERA be damned? Like, how conscious of you are of the ratios down the stretch?
I fairly. I mean, I think that kind of the state of your ratios like really dictates your pitching moves at the end of the season. If you need to kind of protect those ratios, or you're trying to make gains with your ratios, you're going to play a lot more conservatively. You're going to be taking less chances on guys, maybe, on dicier arms, or, on maybe, pitcher call-ups or something, pitcher prospects. And, one thing, if you are in that position where you're protecting ratios and trying to maintain those ratios, one thing that I often do is instead of kind of utilizing kind of mid-level starters, I will take up, 2 spots, say, on my roster, and I'd rather put in kind of like high leverage relievers or something like that to kind of maintain that. But if that's the case, I'm doing something like that, and I'm being very conservative in my moves. Now, if I've either blown my ratios out, or I have more wiggle room with them, that's then when you are kind of, you're a little bit more flexible. You can take those shots on kind of mid-level arms, or try and take advantage of pitching matchups. or you may be taking more advantage on kind of riskier arms, like some of those pitcher prospects. But like where you stand at this point, it really dictates how what you're doing on kind of the pitching level moving forward.
Yeah, it's going to be context dependent, obviously. Ruvain, what anything to add?
Yeah, currently I am seventh overall in TGFBI. So I
Nice.
am
Oh,
I am
wow.
extremely conscious of ERA and WHIP. So this past week, what did I do? I picked up a one two-star pitchers and two middle relievers with good ERA and good WHIP, and and on teams that are in the playoff mix, so that hopefully if I throw them in, they can get a possible win. So this way, at the end of this week, when the week starts next week, and the week after that, I'll know exactly who I want to play. Do I want to play the middle reliever and play it safe? Do I want to be more aggressive with a two-star pitcher? But you have to be very mindful of this, because if you're going for an overall, like I have, this is the second time in, I think it was in 2019, I finished second overall in DGFBI. If you're going for an overall, which is what I'm looking for right now, you have to be so mindful with these things, and sometimes pushing and trying to get those two starts and get those strikeouts and the wins affects your ERA and WHIP, and the ERA and WHIP really affect your overall standing.
You got to cross your fingers for me as well. I'm third in the overall in the NFBC 50s, 4,000 entries.
Wow,
Oh yeah.
wow.
That's good.
Let's do it. Before we ask the last question here, it's time for the Injury Gurus trivia of the week.
So the last thing we're going to discuss this week is going to be talking about prospects and how to use them down the stretch. So recently there have been some high-profile prospect pitchers that were brought up to the majors. There were two of the qualified minor league pitchers who ranked in the top 20 in all the minors in ERA, and one led them in the minors in strikeouts, who were just recently brought up of these prospects. Do you know who they are?
I mean,
Connolly Early?
Who?
Connolly Early?
No.
we're Met fans, so Jonah Tong.
Sprout.
Jonah Tong. Jonah Tong. Well, Sproat almost made it. He was close, but no cigar. Jonah Tong had 179 strikeouts in the minors, which led all the minors, AA, AAA, with a 1.43 ERA in the minors. And Nolan McLean had a 2.45 ERA in the minors in AA and AAA. Both threw 113 innings in AA and AAA, which means there should be no innings limit during for the rest of the season. A couple of guys you have to think about: the guy the Red Sox called the prospect Peyton Toll. He had a 3.4 ERA over 91 innings with 133 strikeouts, so he was on the same projection as Jonah Tong. If the Miami Marlins were in the playoff race, they would have probably called up Robbie Snelling, who also had 2.68 ERA and 159 strikeouts in the minors this year. So my question to you, Lauren, is this: how do you use these prospects? Because I see these prospects on teams that I'm fighting for the overall, and a lot of them are being sat. I in the overall and in the TGFBI, I'm actually playing Nolan McLean and Jonah Tong because I think you get some strikeouts and a possible win out of them. How do you manage these prospects?
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely open to using them. I think it is, based off of your team context, though. I mean, like I said, if you're really tight on the ratio front, I'm less likely to do it. But I think it's a good strategy. I think looking for we've got about 3 starts left, and I think that some of these call ups, if they've got great pitching matchups, I'm absolutely interested in using them because you're just trying to exploit this matchup, and these are guys that maybe these major leaguers haven't really seen. You can kind of sneak some strikeouts and wins, but of course, kind of with any of these kind of riskier arms, you do have that ratio risk attached to it, so it can blow up in your face. So you kind of have to pick and choose your moments, and like overall, like I will use kind of pitching prospects and other kind of and hitting prospects, but you do have to understand the risk that is attached with them. I think like you may have mentioned earlier in the show where you don't know oftentimes how deep into games that these guys are going to pitch. They may not go over 5 innings. They could have a start that goes sideways immediately, and that can just completely like wreck your day. So you do have to be careful when you do them, but I'm always open to using them for sure.
I mean, Ruvain, you're trying to gain. I mean, you were in 20th place last week, so you're trying to gain. And when you're looking to make a jump, you're going to use these high risk, high reward guys. If you're in first place in a fantasy league by 3 points, you might want to, be a little bit more risk conscious and say, well, I don't want to blow up my ERA and not. So it really is context dependent, I think.
Yeah, it is, which is why I spent the money in Fab to get Jonathan and Nolan McLean, and I'm playing them both. And in the last, I think I've been telling you, over the last 3 weeks, I went from 25th overall to 7th overall. So there are risks with them, but if you look at the last outing that the Red Sox prospect had, I mean, it can blow up in your face also.
Well, hopefully not for the Mets guys. Hopefully they'll just be smoke.
Well, actually, are you looking
Fire.
forward? Are you looking forward to tomorrow night? Today is September 11th. Which September 11th. We have to remember what happened and everything like that, and remember Mike Piazza's home run afterwards. That was a big moment in New York. That's just something that happened. But tomorrow is a big day for the Mets. Also at Citi Field, Jonah Tong is starting against Jacob deGrom at Citi Field.
Ooh.
Oh man, that
I
is.
Who do you
noticed that.
Are you going to root against Jacob deGrom?
I'm gonna root against him, of course. Here we at the Cohen family we hate DeGrom. Or we don't hate him. We don't
DeGrom.
like him.
I've heard the story.
We don't like him. He snubbed us.
Yep.
We don't like him.
Nope. No longer. No
DeGrom
longer
the
fans. Yep.
Do you think that fans are gonna be booing him or cheering him at Citi Field?
I think he's going to get a standing ovation. I think he's going to get a standing ovation for the first inning or two, and if the Mets don't do anything, then they'll just keep cheering him, and because the Mets haven't been doing anything the last couple of days anyway.
All right. Well, there you go. All right. Well, that is it for our strategy here, but we do want to make our last waiver wire picks. Lauren, we'll have you do the honor. You can pick anybody you want other than Harrison Bader, who's at the top of my list for having more playing time and for being hot as heck.
Right, okay. Yeah, I think one guy that I've picked up in a couple of spots because I have a lot of Kyle Tucker shares, so I've been trying to find a replacement player for the past couple weeks now, and I found myself picking up Jeremiah Jackson of the Baltimore Orioles a lot. He was called up in the beginning of August, and he's been receiving kind of everyday playing time for about 3 weeks now, and he's great because they have him playing every day. He's batting second, and in that stretch, he's hitting really well. He has a 288 batting average with an 867 OPS. He has 5 home runs in that 19 game span. With 10 runs scored and 14 RBI. He's been making quality contact, and he's great because he doesn't really hurt you anywhere. He doesn't have a steal so far, but he kind of has a power speed combo that he had kind of throughout the minor leagues. But I wouldn't be surprised if he tacks on a swipe or two before the end of the season. And so he's someone that I like because he's got the everyday role. He's hitting high in the lineup. He's not hurting you. He's hitting pretty well, and that's really all you can ask for some of these waiver guys that you pick up.
And you already have Jeremiah Jackson in Tout Wars, so
I do.
I see that.
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else you're going to pick up this week in Tout Wars?
I would say not in Tout Wars. I'm not going to tell you that, but
Because you might you could be playing against me. You never know.
I could. I know that if we both win, we will be playing for the championship.
Yeah.
I think.
You got to give me information, Lauren. You got to.
I know.
That's why we have you in the show here.
That's the only reason, yeah. No, I think that, I brought up like Jake Berger earlier too. This is, I think, someone, like I said, he's had this disappointing season, but I had kind of picked him up in a couple spots where I was desperate for power. And, there was some like risk with him because he's had a poor season. He's been on the IL a ton. There was concern that he had fallen into short side platoon. But in his last 7 starts since coming off of the IL, he's hit 4 home runs in that span, and he's been playing both against righties and lefties. So I think those kind of short side platoon role concerns can be kind of washed away a little bit. He's been batting cleanup, and this is exactly why I picked him up. I needed power. I think you want to try and be careful. You don't want to overlook some of these guys. I think it's hard. At this time in the season, there aren't many kind of 30 home run bats hanging around on the waiver wire. And I understand that, he's had that down year, but those are kind of opportunities that you can take advantage of. And if you are power hungry, I think that you should at least consider, a Jake Berger.
Agree. Ruben, what about you?
I got a bunch of outfielders that you may want to consider for this week. First of all, take a look and see if Tommy Edmonds available on your waiver wire because he was just activated from the IL and he's only 57% owned in CBS and he should get an everyday job and the Dodgers probably want to see how he's able to play every day. So if he's available, you definitely grab him. Jake Mangum in his last 6 games, he has 3 stolen bases, batting 353. He's only 20% owned in CBS. If you need stolen bases, he's a guy to look at. Instead of Harrison Bader, why not on the Phillies look at Brandon Marsh? In the last 2 weeks, he's batting close to 500. He's got a couple of home runs, 8 RBIs. He's in the platoon, but he's playing a little bit more now because he's hitting. He's only 12% owned in CBS. So if he's 12% owned in CBS, he's probably available in other leagues. And another outfielder slash first base who's on a heater right now, that's Jake Bowers of Milwaukee. In the last week, he's 8 for 17. It's a 471 clip with 2 homers, 7 RBIs. He goes on streaks, and if he's streaky, and if you pick him up this week and he continues his streak, you may reap the benefits of someone who's only 2% owned in CBS leagues.
So I gave you Bader. I'll throw in Drew Gilbert. Just looks interesting. The Giants got him from the Mets. Got a little bit of power. He's got 3 homers so far. Interesting. Josh Bell, pretty hot this week. You never know. Comfortable with his old club in Washington. Romy Gonzalez. He's batting .311 with 9 homers and 5 stolen bases on the year in 270 at bats. I own him a lot of teams in the NFBC. He's got tremendous positional eligibility, and I've played him as my middle infielder, or if I need a sub for second base or whatever. Romy Gonzalez, very interesting to me. And if you need a closer, Jose Ferrer of the Nationals, he's available in a lot of leagues. He's somewhat interesting. I know that Washington's not great, but he's the guy. Pitcher preview, Lauren. Any pitchers you're interested in this week?
Yeah, I think kind of looking ahead kind of at the 2-start week, I think Jack Leiter's an interesting start. He's been really, really great of late. He's kind of rocking a 2.66 ERA and a 101 whip over his last 4 starts. And, most impressively, he's got 29 strikeouts in that 23.2 inning span, which is good for an 11.03 K per 9. So that's really great. He's looking to pick up his 4th quality start in 5 games. Which is a good sign, and I think that he's a good bet to pick it up. The Astros may seem scary, but they are only 27th in OPS against righties over the last 30 days, and the Marlins aren't super scary. So I think that Jack Leiter is a good play this week for wins and strikeouts, and I think you should feel comfortable starting him in 12-plus teamers.
Agree. I'll throw in Shane Smith has been great for the White Sox. He's playing Baltimore this week, and then he's a future 2-star pitcher. He's playing the Yankees and Washington. He's just been great lately. He does get strikeouts, so he's interesting to me. Anybody else, Ruby?
Yeah, I got a couple. I got Jason Alexander, who's the assistant to the traveling assistant of the New York Yankees. No, I'm kidding. Jason Alexander of the Houston Astros. He's a possible 2-star, and he's actually the guy I picked up in TGFBI as my possible 2-star for this week. His last couple of starts, today I think he pitched today, and he pitched pretty decently as well. But before then, he had 17 strikeouts in the last 17 2/3 innings. If he gets a 2-start week this week, I think he's a guy definitely to look at. Ryan Weathers, 1 start. He pitched today, and he pitched extremely well. 5 innings, 5 hits. Yes, it was against Washington.
Chris Torres had him.
But he's pitching at Colorado next week, and Colorado is not that great, so you may want to consider him. And another guy who everyone, I don't know why people don't like him, but Martin Perez. He's 1 start this week, and he's playing against Baltimore, and he's actually pitched pretty decently, and he's available in most leagues. He's only 10% owned in CBS leagues, so he's a guy that if you want a 1-start this week and a possible 2-start the following week, he's the guy to pick up.
Also throwing Jose Quintana 2-start. He's been pretty good, actually. Plays on a good team, playing the Angels and the Cardinals. That's not bad.
Yeah, no, it's funny. I had both Quintana and Jason Alexander. I think those guys are available. You should get them. But Quintana's so underrated. I don't really get it. But yeah.
What's his record on the year? It's 11-6 with a 3.88 ERA. That's not bad.
No, You don't get the strikeouts, but this is he's a good win play, and he's not going to blow up your ratios.
Yeah, if you're in a 15-team league and he's available, what else are you looking for?
Yep. What else do you want?
Yeah. All right, Ruvain. Injury update, final one of the regular season. Go for it.
Okay, we'll start with Bo Bichette, who's on the IL with a left knee sprain. We don't know how bad it is. He actually probably tweaked it when he slid into home against the Yankees last weekend. He's eligible to return on September 17th. We don't know if that's going to happen or not. Ernie Clement is getting more playing time, and IKF, Isaiah Kiner Falefa, should get more playing time as well. Xander Bogaerts has resumed light baseball activity. He's coming back from a non-displaced left foot fracture, but he's one of those guys. He may come back the last week of the season. He may not. If you want to take a risk on him, fine, but the chances of him coming back and being extremely productive, like the Xander Bogaerts you want, is probably not going to happen. I mentioned Dean Kramer earlier. He's got right forearm soreness. His MRI was negative. He's going to have an extensive bullpen session this weekend. If everything goes well, he could be activated for next week. Who's he playing next week? He's playing the Yankees. Do you want that? I don't know if you want that or not, especially coming off someone who has a forearm issue and you don't know how long he's actually going to go. Nolan Schoenel of the Angels. He's been out for the last 3 weeks with a left wrist bone bruise. He's expected to be to be activated this coming week. So if he's available on your waiver wire, you want to try to grab him. That's the guy. And another guy who I don't know what I would do if I had him on my team. I don't have many shares of him, but Cole Reagans is set for a second rehab appearance over the weekend. His first rehab start this past week, he threw 3 innings, which is fine, threw 45 pitches. If he has another rehab start, he may still need one more before he gets activated. If not, the Royals may activate him, and he may only pitch a couple of innings, like 4 or 5 innings. If you had Lauren, if you had Cole Reagans on your roster, A, are you still holding? First of all, do you still have him? And B, are you going to play him for the last 2 weeks of the season?
I wouldn't play him. I'm not really interested in pitchers coming off of the IL with like 3 starts left. I think it's too risky. You don't know what you're going to get. And so I would probably shy away from that.
It would have to be a very good circumstance that I would desperately need him and couldn't find anybody that would be more helpful. I guess if it was just anybody, game start would be worth a lot of points, I guess. Maybe some strikeouts, but yeah, you don't know what length he's going to get, and it's hard to trust pitchers. I agree very much with Lauren's point that she made a couple times this show, is that it's hard to trust pitchers coming off the IL late. They're not going to be ramped up. You don't know what you were going to get. They're going to go 3-4 innings. That's it. No, the answer is probably not.
So he's 87% owned in CBS League still, which is crazy to think about.
How
because
much
he
of that
hasn't pitched in so
percentage is
long.
because of Nick Pollock?
Probably a big chunk, but the thing is, people know he was injured, so the fact that you have him and he's just a wasted spot in your roster, and you don't even know if you're going to pitch him, and you have to see, oh wait, who's he going to pitch against? Oh wait, how's the weather going to be? Oh wait, there's so many things. Why even have him on your roster in a redraft league at this point?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, well, that brings us to the end of the show. Thank you so much, Lauren, for coming on the show. Can you just tell the audience where we can see all of your stuff?
Yeah, you can catch me over at Fantrax. I write a couple articles a week there throughout the baseball season, and that's where you'll find my work. And thank you guys for having me on. I've had a blast. Like I said, I've been such a fan of this show. You guys are these strategy gurus that I love soaking up information from, and so it's been great, and I'm very happy to close out the season with you guys.
Oh, we're so glad to have you on the show. Always have great conversation, and you've been a very good competitor last 2 years in Tout Wars. It's kind of hard to beat you, Lauren, and I think you beat me every game that you played against me this year.
Well, we'll have to see. We'll have to see if we both advance this week, because then we'll be playing each other. So.
Yeah, well, it's definitely been a blast, and thank you so much for the compliment. Yeah, we try to do good things on the show here, and we had a lot of fun this season. Ruvain, what about you?
You can follow me on Twitter or X at MLB Injury Guru, where I'm still tweeting out injury updates as they come. You can catch some of my writing on Rotoballer, where I write out injury updates and everything for players coming up and everything like that. And Ariel, I want to thank you for a great season this year doing this podcast. It was a lot of fun, and let's just hope our teams finish strong.
Absolutely. Let's cross our fingers. Let's get it to the end. We're doing that. We actually have a lot of good battles yet to go in the next 2 weeks. We're in the money in a bunch of our NFBC leagues. I think 4 out of 5. I'm in the money for that. And GDD and our home league, we're a couple points out. And Labor, I went from 9th place to 4th place in the last 2 weeks because I threw away all my closers and I'm playing 9 starters. And you just keep pushing it. I mean, obviously you're going to pay more attention to the leagues you're doing well in, but I push everything. At least I check everything. pedal to the metal, everybody. That's the way to work. That's the way to win, and that's the way to treat your fellow man. So do that, Ruven. It's been a pleasure working with you this past season. I know we were the podcast of the year from the FSWA last year, and so hopefully we've replicated that for this year. And thanks again to you for a great regular season.
Yep, and a wish for many more successful years.
Yeah, we might do a recap podcast somewhere in October, possibly, and then we'll have a show at Arizona, I believe, in early November. So, once again, thank you to the audience for listening. Hopefully, we've helped you throughout the year with players, with strategy, with some fun. Final softball update. I'm alive in my Sunday league. I'm in semifinals. We're going this week. We were the 1 seed. We're a good team, and we just won a good quarterfinal in the night league. We're in the semifinals there as well. Hopefully, we'll win a couple more championships. I won in the spring in the night league. Any updates for you?
No, my softball team was eliminated in the playoffs in the second round. So boo-hoo.
I'm sorry, man. All right.
Yeah,
well,
whatever.
Once again, thank you so much to Lauren Auerbach for coming on. And from all of us here at Beat the Shift, have a great time. Enjoy. Go win your leagues. And, of course, we'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Beat the Shift podcast presented by Fangraphs. Follow us on Twitter at beat_shift_pod.